Well, we are here with very special guest Shuhei Yoshida himself.
Welcome.
Wow!
Yay!
We
Hello
are
from
so
Tokyo.
hello.
Yes.
We are so excited to have you. We've been, waiting for a long time to get the courage to ask you to be on the podcast.
You
So we're just so
shouldn't
excited to
need the
be here.
courage to ask me. I love joining these podcasts. So
Oh,
yeah,
wonderful,
very
wonderful.
excited.
Yes.
Yeah, you're one of the people that we would just see around the industry, but never had the opportunity to introduce ourselves or say hi. And when you left Sony, we thought, oh,
This is our chance.
maybe we missed our chance, or maybe now is the chance. So we're just so happy we could make it happen.
Yeah, well, you may know that I've been lifelong Nintendo games fan, right? But because I work for Sony, I had to restrain myself from
Yes.
expressing my love for
Yes.
Nintendo games.
We honestly understand that well, but from the other side, we were so associated with Nintendo when we worked at the company. We loved so many PlayStation games that we couldn't tell anybody about. So I would keep it to myself as I played all of the God of War games, and gosh, so it was the experience from the other side. That's so interesting that you that you had the same experience that we did.
So you've been away from Sony for a little while now, but you've been out there. You've been appearing on podcasts. You've been sharing actively on social media. And it's so interesting because sometimes a lot of these gaming executives step away and they just vanish. You never hear from them again. So
okay.
it's wonderful that you're still out there, but is there any do you have any goal of I want to share my stories or I want to share my wisdom that's causing you to stay out there and to share all this great knowledge that you have?
Not much like that, but I used to do lots of media interviews when I was running the first party many years ago. But somehow the PlayStation's PR strategy or approach changed, that they kind of stopped, putting these, game developer or game production people on media. So, I was doing the indie support role for the last 5 years at PlayStation. So I was able to take interviews or talk to, media or, industry events about the PlayStation support and love of indie games. But, of course, I was not allowed to talk any other subject. And because I have had so many friends in the media, and many of them have become left media and become the influencer. They started these, really nice, podcast or YouTube group. I wanted to go back to them and have a chat about any topics. Now that I don't have to ask for approval for the PR department to show up in a podcast influencer group. So I'm I love doing this, and I strategically booked, because many of us came to me right after the announcement was made, but I was leaving PlayStation, but I booked the interviews with intervals, because I didn't want to take interviews at the same time, because I would have to say the same thing again, right? And it's not fun. And when I do that way, the second person, interviewer, watch the first interview and come up with different questions to ask, so that I won't get bored answering the same questions, or I'll talk about something new that may become some headline or some buzz for the show, and so that continued for the last 3 or 4 months. So I'm kind of, winding down that kind of, going through all my friends, even including, I don't know, about Dave Jaffe. Dave Jaffe is just such a creative guy, who created Twisted Metal and God of War, and one of my longtime friends and collaborator. So I wanted to do something for his show, but you may know that his show is really dangerous to show up, because he asks such spicy questions. So I wasn't able to do so until a week ago, I think. A couple of months ago, I came up with this idea that because he has such a celebrated and colorful career, instead of letting him ask me lots of difficult questions. How about I interview him and he talks about, his long time career, how he came up with the idea of making Twisted Metal or, God of War, and how he decided to leave the game development and had become a YouTuber. So it went well. So after I met with all my friends, and now I can meet new friends like yourself. So
That's awesome. What a great strategy to, be able to share so many different perspectives and aspects of your career.
yeah,
And
and I'm
I
very
agree.
much looking
Yeah.
forward this one because you have a very interesting background, and
Yeah.
between you and I could exchange some interesting stories.
I think
Yeah.
so. We promise not to ask you like super spicy questions, but we have some spicy ones too.
We know how it goes.
Okay.
Are you ever surprised at how things that you say in these interviews gets picked up in the media or picked up by fans? Because that's frankly something that happens to us as well. Is we're always talking about things that we think are interesting, but it's always sometimes unusual to be like, oh, that's the thing that gets a headline. The former Nintendo employees, the former PlayStation executive.
Yeah, that's always the case. Believe me, I took so many media training back in the days, and one small thing I mentioned might become the headline, and all the other good stuff I said might not be covered at all. So I've been seeing that. Something like when I said the other reaction to the announcement of Switch 2. I think I said a lot of good things about Switch 2, but the only thing I picked up was, Nintendo maybe losing their identity or something that I said.
Yeah, we saw those headlines.
So
a lot of the times,
I got a lot of hate message from Nintendo fans,
no.
globally, but that's okay.
That's okay. How it goes. But a lot of times, they pull out the most like clickbait headline, and that you kind of miss the context around all the things that you were talking about. So we've had it happen to us too.
I was in Brazil for Gamescom Latam, and I took 10 or 11 interviews, and the things I said about Game Pass, was picked up as Shuhei Yoshida, EX Sony executive, criticizing Game Pass as being dangerous for the industry or something that.
Yeah.
And I got lots of hate message from Xbox fans.
So. Look out. Yeah.
But we okay.
We want to talk to you about kind of the relationship between Nintendo and Sony, and it's something that we've shared a bit on our podcast, kind of our perspective from the Nintendo side, where there was always, it was very clear, a deep respect of what Sony has done over the years, and an understanding that there were times where Sony was clearly outperforming Nintendo. So I think there was this recognition of, we're now going down some fairly different paths where Sony has its lane that it's going down, Nintendo has its lane going down, but there was always like, we understand that at any moment, like they could really be the top dog or upend everything that we're doing. And I'm so curious, what was the feeling about Nintendo inside Sony?
Oh yeah. So, aside from, my personal feeling, I always admired, Nintendo games, and because I was on the development side, I got so many inspirations and learnings from the games that they released. But other than myself, the overall very interesting, working for PlayStation, their perception of their competition is always Xbox. They see, Microsoft being a competition, and because Xbox is very similar, performance hardware, right? Like a high-end, console, and, matured games. And Nintendo is very, very different, right? Nintendo is family-friendly, games for everyone, and, not about technology, it's more about, having fun with friends and families, and always have, multiple controllers, bundled with the hardware. So inside Sony, even when they do like a business analysis, Nintendo doesn't show up even. So there's a competition market share between PlayStation and Xbox, and somehow they don't include Nintendo. Not that they're ignoring Nintendo, but that they do not necessarily feel Nintendo is competition, because Nintendo is covering a different audience, and in a bigger scale, Nintendo is bringing young audience into the gaming, and some of them, when they grow up, might graduate into more mature systems like PlayStation or Xbox. So I think of course there's a huge respect for what Nintendo does, and in terms of how Nintendo should be doing in the industry, we all felt that it's great to have Nintendo continue to be successful, so that we can grow the industry, continue to grow the industry together, kind of feeling, I think. Well, but except for one market, it's Japan. Nintendo is hugely strong, and Xbox almost doesn't exist. I should be careful. I may get hate message from Xbox fans.
It's true, though. It's actually true.
This is a fact.
Japan, it's very hard to see, where's the Xbox. Even though the PC gaming is becoming a bit more popular in Japan, but it's all about Nintendo versus Sony. So the people, PlayStation people working in Japan see Nintendo clearly as competition, but outside Japan, PlayStation people clearly see Xbox as a primary competition.
For the first couple generations of PlayStation, Nintendo was still iterating on graphics from like the Nintendo 64 to the GameCube, and then they kind of broke off with the Wii. What was the reaction? It was like, what's going on here with something that was just so completely different than what you'd seen before?
Well, that was the amazing. Well, actually, Nintendo 64 was obviously, going for 3D graphics and the higher, and performance. They even named the system with 64. That's a larger number than 32-bit system, which was PlayStation and Sega Saturn, right? Yeah, but what was most amazing about Nintendo 64 was actually Mario 64. The way they kind of showed the industry how to use a 3D space as a playground for making games. So I think that was the biggest impact that Nintendo 64 had. So not necessarily just going for the high-end graphics, but they opened up a lot of possibility of designing games in 3D environment. And of course, GameCube didn't fare well because it didn't have either highest performance or something unique, like other systems that Nintendo followed up. So Nintendo Wii was amazing. That combination of Nintendo Wii and DS was one of the golden era of Nintendo, right? Yeah, they are doing so many interesting things, and obviously because they went so tangentially in terms of system and the kind of games that enable the systems. Really, there are no competition. And when you look at the overall, home console sales, the Wii era was like a huge upside, because it's almost like, there's a PlayStation, Xbox, combined is very, very stable, total number of units sold. And on top of that, Wii was added like 100 million units on top of that. So yeah, that was great for the industry, I think. And that inspired other companies like ourselves and Xbox, so we came up with, PlayStation Move controller, or they did Kinect, or some other systems. So that was very, very inspirational, and that must have brought even more newer audience to the gaming because of that ease of use and the ease of user interface.
Was there anything that Nintendo ever came up with
Mhm.
that you really wished that
Mhm.
you were able to do that at Sony instead? Was there any time at all where Nintendo did something where it just felt like,
Mm,
oh man, if only we thought of that first?
mm, mm, mm. Well, Nintendo introduced many new things first, and other companies, including PlayStation, took inspiration, like introduced analog stick. I think introduced vibration. I think, yeah. So, well, we are excited to take these ideas, and not necessarily. I wish we did it before Nintendo. Something that amazed me even today is the pricing of Nintendo Switch 2 in Japan. That's still mind boggling because when you take the exchange rate between Japanese yen and and the US dollars, it's like 145 or 150 yen to the dollar, and they are selling Nintendo Switch 2 in Japan for 50,000 yen, including the 10%, consumption tax, which means they are selling Nintendo Switch 2 for $300 US dollars in Japan, which is Switch 1 price, right? So that's amazing business decision because it's a same hardware, right? Same cost of goods, right? So yeah, it's amazing thing. I do not necessarily um, think other companies like PlayStation would emulate what they did. Well, it doesn't make sense to me, selling the same thing for such a different price for other consumers. But it's clearly showing that they want to keep the stronghold in Japan that they already have. So that's amazing decision that they have made.
Yeah, for us being based in the US, we definitely had some puzzlement around that decision of, well, I
Yeah,
wish it was like that here, but what might be
yeah.
going on there? But yeah, that's true that there was always a real like feeling of pride of we
Mm,
are this big in the Japanese market. And it seemed like, Sony was always bigger in the US, but also in Europe as well. Like,
mm.
how did Sony view the domestic Japan market?
Japan market has become smaller and smaller in terms of percent of install base for PlayStation. It used to be, I don't remember, maybe 25 or 30 or like, we used to think here's Japan, here's US, and here's Europe, right? All time, like three big, market like that. And I think Nintendo Switch is still like that, right? Nintendo Japan is big. But now, the install base of PlayStation must be, well below 10%. So, it's not necessarily Japanese market has shrunk. Actually, it could be shrinking because the population of the younger kids are shrinking in Japan. People don't have as many kids as Japanese people used to have, but it's the other market that have grown, very large. So the importance of Japanese market has, become less and less, even though Japan is still the home of lots of great, game publishers and game developers. So the importance of region is still there, but from the market standpoint, Japanese market is very small. So I think that's one of the reasons that PlayStation have moved the headquarters from Japan to US to really have a global view from the US and European standpoint.
Earlier on, you mentioned the Nintendo DS as being part of that sort of golden age. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the most fascinating things kind of
Mm-hmm.
in gaming history was the introduction of the PSP and Sony trying to enter into that handheld
Mm-hmm.
gaming market.
Mm-hmm.
And we remember some of the things that were said by Sony very, very strongly of like, we're going to elevate the handheld gaming market, make it not just for kids. What did you all learn like once you actually got into handheld games. And
Yeah,
it's great. It's
portable.
great that the PSP and the DS were both great systems.
Yeah.
But that rivalry was so interesting then.
Yeah, portable system like a PSP, the motivation or reason for entering that is, in my recollection, was the inspiration didn't come necessarily from, there's a Game Boy market, we should tackle them, or less about that, but more about this, big cycle of, console. So when PS1 is, past the peak and coming down, PS2 will be going up, but there's a, gap, few years of, older system is really going down and the newer system doesn't have much, business at all. So the having the portable to bridge the gap kind of will maintain the certain level of business for the company. So that was the motivation, I think, to introduce, PSP between the PS2, coming down and the PS3 going up. And luckily, PSP had the really good, audience, and DS went, like a different way, having, two screens and touch screen, so provided in different kind of game experience. So I think, both systems went very well. However, that was the one happy generation of portable gaming, because in my mind, because smartphone came up and smartphone one by one took the existing other products market, like Walkman, music player market, or the digital camera market, and of course, internet device market, and finally the gaming, portable gaming system market. And of course, touch gaming is not the same as playing games with the real buttons and sticks. However, the convenience of you already own the portable system. Do you want to hold another device when you go out? Maybe not, right? So that was the, in my mind, demise of the dedicated portable gaming market. And of course, Nintendo Switch is great because it's a hybrid, both portable and the home system. So it's different. But after, 3DS, did pretty well. But after 3DS, it's going to be really hard to think about launching a dedicated new portable gaming system and getting a large audience like it used to.
Yeah, that was the
used to have.
Yeah, I think that was the one time when we were within the company where we saw genuine fear from, the executives at Nintendo, was when we saw the rise of mobile games. And there was all of this data coming out. I'm sure you saw this as well when you were inside PlayStation, of like kids younger and younger having their first video game experiences not on a console anymore, like we were when we were kids, but on a mobile device. And someone shared this video of this little kid, like 3 years old, playing games on an iPad, and you saw everyone's face in that meeting. It was like, it's over for us. This is the end of the handheld market. It was scary
because every parent know, myself included, it's such an easy device to give to kids, right? And these devices take care of these kids, and we can do their own life. Yeah, so from my standpoint, Nintendo was really helping, still trying to teach kids how to play games with real buttons and sticks, right? Rather than touch control, so that they can grow up as a proper gamer. So I still, today I applaud Nintendo, trying to keep doing that for the whole industry. But now, even hardcore 3D open world action adventure games are playable with touch screen, right? That's unbelievable. And see how many kids play games like Roblox on
Yes.
smartphone, right? That's unbelievable. Yeah. So I think even including Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox are together fighting against all these other way of playing games. In my mind.
Totally agreed.
With the Switch 2, right, right on the horizon, everybody's wondering, well, is it going to do as well as the Switch? And there's this interesting thing just kind of through the years in the industry where the company that has the top platform sometimes struggles with their next one. And we experienced that with the Wii to Wii U. And you had the PS2 to PS3, which was a challenging generation. Why do you think this phenomenon happens?
On the Xbox 360.
Exactly,
Yes,
the Xbox One. We've all
Everybody
experienced it.
went through this horrible thing. Yes. Why do you think this is?
Well, one thing is, there's in my mind again, there's a force of capitalism that once you are on top, the investor or whatever force you to take advantage of the position, right? And because that's the right thing from capitalist standpoint, but sometimes that thinking backfires because we are not just talking about one product that people just buy and use. We are talking about whole industry of software developers and all these partners and even consumers when they see the top companies being slack or being becoming slightly too comfortable. They see the opportunity for the others to take over because from partner standpoint, I believe it's always good to have multiple platforms competing, because they need the partner software companies support. So one dominant force, having is really difficult in terms of power balance between the platform holder and the game publishers and developers. So it's always healthy to have the platform side to compete so that everybody can be elevated. Other than that, because this is innovation industry and the entertainment industry, people can get bored, right? Something that's really popular might become tired when you play the same kind of games again and again. They may be bored and look for something else, including the whole video game category. So that's a dangerous thing. So that's another reason having a competition is really healthy, and that's another reason the non-top companies try to come up with something different to be able to leapfrog the other top guy, if they just continue, doing the same thing. I don't know if I answered the question.
No,
I don't think there is an
Yeah.
answer, but this is great perspective.
Yeah.
Do you have a feeling, I feel like we were talking about this a little bit about how the games industry is just changing so much. And now there are so many of those games like a Roblox or a Fortnite where one person can just play the same one game forever. I think when we were growing up, we were like jumping from game to game, from platform to platform. We had such a wide variety of perspectives in terms of the games we're playing. But nowadays that the habits are so different. What do you think is like the future of the games industry?
Well, seeing the ranking of the games, like a top 20 games most played, the longest hours or like that, and every year, maybe 15 of them are the same game.
Yeah.
It's kind of depressing to me.
It's kind of scary, right?
Yeah, it's scary. Some people just enjoy playing the same game every time, like you're saying. And part of that is they're enjoying the playing games with other friends, right? Like my daughters play the same game for the last 5 years, with their friends. It's a mobile game called Hif's Identity. It's like it's a NetEase game about about the asymmetry, multiplayer games. They license the game design from Dead by Daylight.
Oh,
But they, it's a great game. They keep updating and introducing new characters. But the, biggest attraction for them is to just play games with their friends and have chat, right? Sometimes they just have chat and they're in the game, but they're just talking. So I totally understand. And that's a different kind of benefit that games are providing. And the other, game like a single player games or narrative based game, action game, each game has different kind of benefit. Like many party games that Nintendo is very good at, like Mario Party and like that, provide really great tool for people to get together and enjoy time together in the same room. So as long as there are variety, continued variety and continued, new ideas comes out, I think it's all right. The reason I love indie games is indie games every year you find 5 to 10 games that you never think would have existed, right? Like this year, like a Blueprints. I don't know if you have played
amazing.
Blueprints.
Yes, I love that game. Amazing.
Yeah, this is like, how did he come
How
up
did you
with
do
this
this?
idea?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So every year these games come out, and it's an inspiration for everyone in the industry. I know many people in the big studios, making AAA games. They play indie games as well. They enjoy, playing these new games, and they get, inspiration by playing these games. And also the technological advancement. Games is always the first thing that being used to try the new technology, right? We talked about, Nintendo Wii or, other things, and even Switch 2 introduced the one camera capture 4 players at the same time, right? It's it wasn't possible when we are doing iToy, right? So the gameplay may be similar, just you waving your arms in front of TV. But now with new technology, I believe they're using AI or something in the back end to be able to capture 4 different faces and identify every player at the same time with just one system and one camera. So that's a technological advancement allows game developers to create new game experience. So because technology doesn't stop advancing, the AI or new technology will always be invented and evolve. Game developers will be the first ones to take advantage of these technological advancement to create new game experience. So I'm always optimistic about the future of games.
Something that's been controversial with the Switch 2 is Mario Kart World being priced at $80, which is surprising considering most of the games on the original Switch were $60. And I'm curious about your experience at Sony. A lot of games were $70, but also a lot of games on the PlayStation have these huge budgets, these incredible productions. How do you price games like that? How do you decide that $70 is what works for you?
Yeah, that's another thing. One of the things I mentioned in one of the interviews, and the people, I kind of defended the pricing of $80 of Mario Kart because every game has a different value that it delivers to players. So in my mind, it's really up to each publisher and game developers to price their games. It doesn't have to be that every game has to be at $70 or $80 or whatever, because every game is different. Look at some of these service games. They are charging $100 for you to buy this one digital trading card or something. Crazy, right? But some people see the benefit, so they spend that $100. What's wrong with it, right? So it's up to you if you see the value or not. However, when I said that, yeah, lots of people said that, oh, you are out of touch. We are very struggling in life, because of the inflation and all these difficulty in life. Maybe that's true, but what I said was, look at all the other things. Compare the price of like a movie ticket or whatever, 10 years ago and today, and video games are amazingly, affordable. When you look at the value that the amount of entertainment a good video game provide, like Mario Kart 8, so many people played hours and hours and hours, right? With just one purchase, or maybe some people paid for additional tracks, but additional tracks came with so many contents. So it's really up to the game, and people have to make judgment. Which game provide the entertainment that you want, and see if it makes sense to pay the price on day one. Or some games, many games, price comes down when you wait as well. So I'm all for each publisher pricing each game differently.
Did you ever hit a point at Sony when the games started getting bigger and more lavish of like, we might be hitting like a limit for how far what we can get away with as far as what we're offering in a single game?
I think it's very, very good question, because going from PS3 to PS4, I was still managing first party. It almost felt like going big was safer. It may be counterintuitive, but if we spend enough money to make a big game, the chance of success felt like increase, because everybody wanted to play bigger game and more beautiful graphics and more realistic looking characters, more gameplay hours. And the budget was still, the biggest game that I was managing, the budget was like 200 million or so, and that's huge amount. However, because the number of games being produced from AAA standpoint became smaller and smaller, because each title took larger budget. So the publishers are choosing smaller number of games to invest in terms of AAA titles. So the average unit sales increased. So during PS1 days, selling million unit was a huge hit. But now selling 10 million is kind of ordinary, right, from a AAA standpoint. So the budget was increasing, but the sales and revenue were also increasing to cover the increase. However, moving from PS4 to PS5, somehow technology is similar, but the budget is still increasing. And I saw some analysis or estimate of one same franchise released during PS4 era and PS5 era generation, double the budget. And that has reached, I think, to the point that we cannot recoup this investment. So this generation, PS5 generation, I think is the first time that industry really truly believe that there has to be something that has to be done, and in terms of asking studios instead of let's do whatever you dream of, but can you come up with the scope that's manageable? Can you please? Yeah, because it's limitless, right? The capacity of the system, these systems allow so much content to be put into one game. There has to be the limit that artificially created from the company standpoint to contain sustain the business. So I
And I
don't know
think
how they do it because studios always have ideas and there's always drive to compete with other games. But they should look at, listen to consumers as well. Including myself, I don't start a game when I hear the game takes like 100 hours to play.
us too.
Yeah.
We had the
Right?
exact same.
Yeah.
We said the exact same thing very recently. Someone was, "Why not? It's more game to play." I'm like, I don't have time to play
Yeah,
a
I don't
300-hour
have time, and I want
RPG,
to finish the game,
Right.
right?
and I want to
I want
try
to
as many
play.
games as
Yeah,
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, I want to play the game till the end. So
yeah,
yeah, smaller
exactly.
games are great. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think industry wide, we've seen this sort of balance shift, and you're
Mm,
totally right in talking about sort of this PS5 era being
mm,
overinflation of these
mm,
like just huge open world, high budget, triple A. I mean, they're beautiful games and incredible experiences, but you do need to like kind of counterbalance that with smaller experiences with scrappier studios that are making smaller games. And then we saw the great success of a game like Astrobot winning Game of the Year last year,
yeah, yeah,
doing just that. So it
yeah.
really proves the point that like the industry needs to have this kind of balance, and we need to have like a range of games at different price points, of different scope. So I do hope that we will see that in this next generation, because yeah, I do agree with you that like we kind of swung too far maybe to one
Yeah,
side
absolutely.
somehow,
Yeah.
and now it's like, oh, we got to swing back a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah. When you were
limitation is the mother of creativity, right?
That's
Like
right.
when you talk with Team Asobi, Nicholas, you say the head of the studio who created the Astrobot. Because I was close with them, even after I moved on from First Party, they invited me to the studio to try the games in development. They clearly were aware of the limitations. The team was small. They are like 50 people or so, and they knew they cannot really create huge worlds, so they had to come up with the idea that the you know they can manage the scope by making each level a planet, right? So that they can put as many or as small number, as they start making and trying, play testing, and if the game level doesn't work, they can just take it out, and still the game exists because there's no overarching story or anything like that. So they made it so manageable, the scope, but they spend lots of time polishing what they kept inside the game. So the game was mid-size, but was really super polished. That they because they are aware of the limitations that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you mentioned David Jaffe, that actually made me think of one of his lesser known games, Calling All Cars, which I really enjoyed. Which it was like, boy, that's the kind of game that we just don't have anymore, which is
Right.
a big name developer
Yeah,
working on something
yeah.
smaller that he can really put all of their creativity into. It just feels like that's something that we've sort of lost. And I don't really.
That's a great game to play on Nintendo Switch, right?
I would love to have that on
Remake it.
Nintendo
You
Switch.
tell him
Yes,
to remake
David.
David, watch this
Do
show.
it.
So we've been through some of these hot button topics that could get us in a headline. So good job by us navigating all of those. We have more of like a heartwarming question for you, which is, again, we would see you at all of these events and be pretty inspired by you've achieved so much in your career, risen so high within Sony, and yet you're just out at these events, playing games, talking with people. Would you say that you're a social guy? Would you say like you just wanted to get your hands on these games? Like what sets you apart from these other executives that are just like so behind the scenes? It was really inspiring for us.
Thank you. Yeah, all through the time that people praise me as being gamer, even though executive, I always felt, well, because I'm a gamer, right? Yeah, so, I didn't have to try to do anything. I just had to be me. And it's just so that, somehow the video game industry, large companies, management level, they do not like to have many like gamers on top. That's very strange
Weird.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are in the business of video game, right? Why don't they have more executives who love what they handle? They
Did
make
anybody
or
ever
they.
say to you, like, you don't need to do this, maybe spend less time on this? Because, like, we obviously were not at your level, but even we sometimes would have those conversations of like, yo, you should be focused on these things now that you're rising up the ranks. And it was always like, well, this is like what got us here, is like the love of games.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes the work is hard, right? Long hours and very tired and go home and play games, right? Yeah. So, it's really, really, really good for anyone, any kid to think about to do, become, profession, that you love, right? Because you love something, you do extra effort without thinking about it because you love it, and that's the reason that you could excel in doing in your work. So yeah, it was for me. I was ever since I was a kid, I was thinking about some games, like Nintendo games are great and other companies' games are not as good. Why this game is better than that? And I was always thinking, and I learned that there's a game developers behind. Why this person's game is better than other teams' games. So that helped me, like think about producing games. So in my mind, somehow I was already thinking about producers' eyes, training myself, and I kept that question to myself for the last 40 plus years almost. Even before I joined the industry, I was thinking about why I like these games better than the others. Why this game is good. What makes people enjoy games. So yeah, well, yeah. So after I left PlayStation, I'm just doing what I like, and I work with people I respect and I enjoy working with, and that's it. And if that takes me to to the event in Brazil, I'll go. And if that takes me to join, your podcast, I'll do. So that's the thing. That's only parameter that I have if I
Right.
enjoy
Incredible.
doing it.
We know that you're in this new chapter of your career, and you're doing more than appearing on podcasts. We know you're helping out some indie developers. Like, do you have any goal in terms of the projects that you want to take on, or how you want to help these projects?
Yeah, well, so I worked at PlayStation the last 5 years. I was working with indie publishers and indie developers from PlayStation side. So, after I left PlayStation, luckily I'm on the other side. I'm working with some of the friends in the industries, a couple of publishers and developers, and I like to be help for them in some way, one way or another. And one of the companies I'm advising is Kepler Interactive, and recently
Amazing.
they had
Clair
his
Obscur.
product, Expedition.
Best game I've ever played. Clair Obscur. Awesome.
And another game coming up, Rematch, the soccer game, looking
yes, I've
really
seen
good
that.
as
Yes.
well. So I'm very, very happy for them. And I'm working with the former Annapurna Interactive people. You may have seen the news that last year, all of 25 people from
Right.
Annapurna Interactive left the company.
Right,
And
right. A little bit of turmoil,
started
yes.
the new company. And I'm advising with, the people who started the Annapurna Interactive in the first place used to work for me at Santa Monica Studios. They are the external producers. They produce games like Journey or, Edith Finch or,
Yes.
Sound Shapes, really creative small games. And because of me, because there are so many great indie games made outside PlayStation, I stopped funding small games because it didn't make sense for me to allocate fun to something that already come to the PlayStation in volume. So that removed their work at Santa Monica Studios. So that group lost their job. So they left the company and got funding and started Annapurna Interactive. So I've been friends with them for longest time, and now I'm very happy to work with them. And eventually in the future, their new games will be announced, and I hope they will rebuild the great company, indie publishing companies, and provide hits like Annapurna Interactive used to do, and I'm sure they will do because they are the same group, and they are such a creative group that I totally respect and enjoy working with. So these are the two publishers I'm working with, and I'm having so much fun, and I'm learning things every day. Working on the publisher side, and of course I can see how Nintendo works with publishers, or how Xbox works with publishers, and it's really refreshing to be able to have a perspective from the other side. But what I do is the same. Play games and play pitches and look at pitches and discuss what games could be potentially great for these publishers. So I'm doing that every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds so incredible, and what a great thing that these publishers have the benefit of.
They're lucky.
So many years of experience. They're so lucky to be able to work with you. That's so incredible.
Yeah, and we're just so happy that we were able to have this conversation, this former Nintendo Sony crossover. And again, after all these years, I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done for the industry, for being an inspiration for so many people. Just so happy we could make it happen. And us
included. Yes, we totally respect, and we're so inspired by you. And it's so wonderful to see that you're doing so many amazing things after leaving Sony. And I hope that this is the start of a beautiful new friendship, and we can talk more often and see you at a future event. And
are you more like a news podcast, or do you talk about games as well?
We do it all. We do it all.
Okay,
nice. We talk about games.
I'll check out regularly to see what games I should.
We have to send you our Claire Obscure spoiler cast that we just recorded.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That's nice.
2.5 hours, and I definitely cried. So you can enjoy that.
Okay. I watch. Thank you.
Well, next time we see you at an event, we won't be so shy. We'll come by and say hello.
Thank you so much again for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye.